Padre Pio saw the same pattern thousands of times, and most people still miss it. Not in books, not in theories, in real faces, real grief, real fear. Most people think protection looks like an escape. He knew it usually looks like endurance. Stay with me, and you'll recognize it in your own life without forcing signs or pretending pain isn't real. Here's the first micro-truth. If your faith survived something that should have shattered you, that is not nothing. That is evidence. He treated that as spiritual evidence, not emotion evidence. Men and women over 55 who had been through enough to know life doesn't play fair. They weren't coming for entertainment. They weren't coming to be impressed. They came because life had backed them into a corner, and they needed something solid. And this friar was solid, not soft, not vague, solid. Because suffering has a way of stripping away fake religion and leaving only what's real. Padre Pio could tell the difference. And this is where the friar becomes uncomfortable for modern people, because he did not treat suffering like a personality trait. He treated it like a test of what you actually return to. He didn't ask, do you have strong feelings? He watched for something sharper. Do you still return to God when you don't get comfort? Do you still return to prayer when you don't get relief? Because that return reveals whether faith is real or just a season of emotion. And he built souls by training that return. They came carrying loss, illness, family wounds, and a quiet question they didn't always say out loud. And that question, is God still listening to me, has a second layer most people won't admit. It's not only, does God hear me? It's, am I still worth hearing? That's what grief does. That's what sickness does. That's what long disappointment does. And he didn't treat that like a small thing. Because in his spiritual direction, this is where a soul either hardens or becomes humble enough to be held. Padre Pio didn't answer that with drama. He watched something simpler, something more revealing. Because when a soul is truly under pressure, the truth comes out in the small things. Here's what he looked for, not the big speech, not the perfect words, the small return, the quiet return, because the soul reveals itself in what it returns to at night, when nobody is watching. And that's why you'll see the same objects again and again in the hands of suffering people, not as lucky charms, as anchors. And if you're over 55, you know exactly why that matters, because you've watched people lose their anchor. You've watched someone go through loss and then turn hard. You've watched someone face sickness and then turn bitter. You've watched someone get disappointed and then stop praying altogether. He didn't speak gently to that danger. Because he knew what happens when prayer disappears. It doesn't stay empty. Something darker moves in. And that's why he pressed the rosary like a lifeline. Because for many people, it was a worn rosary, polished by years of fingers, a medal kept in a wallet like it's the last thread holding the heart together, a simple devotion to Mary that refuses to die, even when everything else feels dark, that right there is a microsign, not a guarantee, a sign. Because when everything is dark, the soul doesn't choose what's fake, it reaches for what has carried it before. And Padre Pio recognized that reflex. He recognized the soul reaching for Mary, not because life was easy, but because the heart needed a mother. And here's the part that hits hard. He warned people not to chase spectacular signs, because heaven's protection, especially Mary's, usually doesn't arrive like lightning. It arrives like a mother's hand that keeps you from collapsing when nobody sees. If you've ever held yourself together in a bathroom so your family wouldn't see you cry, if you've ever sat in your car and just breathed because you didn't know what else to do, if you've ever whispered one prayer like it was your last thread, then you already understand the kind of protection he was pointing to, not the kind that removes the cross, the kind that keeps you standing beside it. Picture it, a kitchen light on late at night, a bill on the table, a phone that hasn't rung back, a body that feels older than it used to, and you don't have the energy for big speeches, so you do the smallest thing you can do. You reach for one prayer, one bead, one whisper, not because you're strong, because you're trying not to fall apart. A confessor like that recognizes that exact moment, because that moment is where a life is either lost or quietly protected. And there is one quiet sign of that protection that shows up again and again. Not a miracle story, not a guarantee of pain-free life, a sign you can actually recognize in your own daily routine. In the next 30 seconds, I'll name it, and you'll know immediately if it's already happening in your life. But first, be honest with yourself. What are you asking for most right now? Protection, peace, hope, or faith? If you want, type one word in the comments: protection, peace, hope, or faith. Just one word. I read them. In Padre Pio's spiritual guidance, naming your need before God was already the beginning of prayer. Now here is the quiet sign he kept pointing people back to. You return to prayer, especially the rosary, even when you feel nothing. And that return is often Mary's protection at work. And don't miss this, because people hear it and think it's small, but it's not small. If you still return to prayer when you feel nothing, you have something many people don't have anymore. You have a living thread. And when Mary protects, she often protects that thread first, because if the thread survives, the soul survives. His insistence on the rosary was not sentimental. It came from experience. Thousands of people came to him with fears, doubts, and spiritual confusion. And over time, he noticed something consistent. People who abandoned prayer often lost their interior peace completely, because the mind doesn't stay empty. If prayer leaves, something else fills the space. Worry, anger, regret, endless replay. He didn't romanticize this. He treated the interior life like a battleground, and he gave people a steady weapon. A weapon you can hold when you can't hold yourself together. And notice what this is and what it is not. It is not a charm. It is not a deal with God. It is a rhythm that interrupts panic, a rhythm that breaks the spiral, a rhythm that keeps you from being dragged by your own thoughts. He pushed it because it was repeatable, because it was humble, because you can do it on your worst day, and that's why it works when life gets ugly. But those who kept even the smallest rhythm of prayer survived the storm. This is why people so often saw Padre Pio holding the rosary, not because his life was easy, because it was not. His days were filled with confession lines that lasted hours. His body carried immense suffering. His spiritual battles were intense and often hidden. Yet through everything, the rosary remained in his hands, and people began to understand something quietly powerful. The rosary was not merely repetition. It was a path, a slow path that helped the soul walk with Christ and with Mary through the mysteries of life. Joy, suffering, glory, the same mysteries every human life eventually encounters. And sometimes the simple act of letting the beads pass slowly through your fingers can calm a heart that has been racing all day. Imagine that for a moment. Try this right now, just for 10 seconds. Don't overthink it. If you can, place your thumb gently against your index finger, like you're touching one bead. Now inhale slowly, and on the exhale, whisper quietly inside, Mary. Take care of this. Don't force emotion. Just let your breathing slow. One breath, one simple line. Because he understood something people forget. When the body calms, the soul can listen again. The quiet sound of the beads, your breathing slowing, one prayer, then another, not rushing, not performing, just walking, one bead at a time. Many people who came to Padre Pio later testified that when fear overwhelmed them, this simple practice helped them find interior strength again. Not instant answers, but stability. For a lot of people over 55, stability is the miracle. Not the dramatic story, stability. Being able to get up again, being able to keep loving, being able to keep showing up, being able to carry a cross without becoming cruel. And he respected that kind of strength because it's real, it's costly, and it's usually invisible because faith does not always feel strong. Sometimes faith feels mechanical, sometimes it feels dry, sometimes you pray and feel almost nothing. And this is where the real interior struggle begins. There are moments when a person kneels down to pray and a quiet thought appears. Does God still hear me? Sometimes the hardest part is this: you're still doing the right things, but you don't feel the comfort you used to feel. You pray and nothing warms up. You go to church and your thoughts wander. You try and your heart feels far away, and that's when the soul quietly says, maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe I'm too late. Maybe I've wasted too much time. He met people right there, not with shame, with direction. Because dryness doesn't always mean failure. Sometimes dryness is where faith becomes mature. Here's the brutal truth. Dryness is where many people quit, not because they stop believing, because they stop returning. Padre Pio didn't let people confuse dryness with abandonment. Dryness is not God leaving. Sometimes dryness is God strengthening you without the training wheels. And if you keep returning through dryness, you're not failing, you're growing. It is not rebellion, it is fatigue. Years of prayer, years of hoping, years of carrying burdens that seem to remain. And inside the heart, two voices begin to appear. One voice says, keep praying. The other whispers, what difference does it make? He saw this struggle constantly in the people who came to him, and he did not condemn them for it, because he knew that spiritual dryness is one of the most common experiences in the life of faith. Even saints walked through those deserts. Even saints sometimes prayed without consolation. Here's a clean distinction that helps. Consolation is a gift. Faithfulness is a choice. When consolation disappears, the choice becomes visible. And Padre Pio cared deeply about that choice. Because it's easy to pray when it feels good. It's heroic to pray when it feels empty. And yet they continued. That continuation, that quiet decision not to abandon God, is one of the deepest acts of faith a soul can make. If you have ever felt that interior battle, you're not alone. Type one word in the comments: doubt, fatigue, distraction, or silence. No story, just one word. Which struggle appears most often in your spiritual life? Doubt, fatigue, distraction, or the silence of God? Just one word, because many people watching will recognize themselves in it. And here is where Padre Pio's wisdom becomes extremely important. Because at the very moment many people think about giving up, something unexpected can happen. They discover a shelter they did not see before. Not a shelter that removes suffering, but one that keeps their faith alive through suffering. He often explained that the protection of the Virgin Mary should not be misunderstood. It does not mean a life without trials. If that were true, the saints would have suffered the least. But in reality, they often suffered the most. Mary's protection works differently. So if someone told you Mary's protection means you won't suffer, they set you up for disappointment. Padre Pio's world was not a world without suffering. It was a world where suffering became a road. Protection often means this: you don't lose the thread, you don't lose the fear of God, you don't lose the desire to return. You may be wounded, but you are still turning toward heaven. That is protection. It protects the soul. It protects perseverance. It protects hope. It protects the fragile flame of faith that refuses to die even in the darkest seasons. And this is where many people later realize something extraordinary. Looking back over their lives, they notice a pattern. Every time they drifted far away, something quietly brought them back. A prayer remembered, a rosary found again, a moment of grace in church, a sudden desire to return to God. He believed these moments were not coincidences. They were signs of maternal guidance, not loud, not theatrical, but steady. And sometimes the first clear sign of that protection is simply this: you keep returning to prayer, and that return is the doorway. Because once you recognize the return, you're ready to recognize the three quiet signs. Not slogans, not checkboxes. Signs that grow slowly, like something living. And when I name them, you'll know immediately which one is already present in your life. And I want you to check yourself honestly. not to judge yourself, to locate yourself, because one of these may be strong in you, and one may be weak. And Padre Pio's kind of spirituality is not about pretending, it's about strengthening the weak place, quietly, steadily, without show. Even after years, even after mistakes, even after discouragement, you return, like a child who knows where home is. And now I want to invite you into something very simple, not dramatic, not emotional manipulation, just a small act of trust. Open your hands slowly in front of you, as if you were holding something fragile. Now think of one worry, only one: family, health, loneliness, a difficult decision. Place that worry in your open hand and quietly say inside your heart the same short prayer many faithful people repeat with confidence. Mary, take care of this. Again. Mary, take care of this. Now stay silent for 5 seconds. Just breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That moment of trust may seem small, but Padre Pio knew something many people forget. Small acts of trust repeated over time become great strength. If you want, write one word in the comments representing what you just placed in Mary's hands. Family, health, peace, just one word. Because many people watching tonight are carrying the same weight, and sometimes the road of faith feels like walking through a storm, not a gentle rain, a storm that tests everything. Padre Pio often helped people understand the spiritual life through a simple image: a pilgrim walking under a mantle. The storm still exists, the wind still blows, but the mantle protects the heart from freezing. Mary's maternal care is often like that mantle. Picture the storm again: rain that doesn't ask permission, wind that finds every weak place, and a pilgrim who keeps walking anyway, not because they feel strong, because they have a covering. And under that mantle, certain habits form naturally, like footprints that keep appearing in the same direction, not to impress anyone, to survive the road. And those who walk under it often develop 3 quiet signs in their lives, and one of these 3 will hit you harder than the others, because it's already been quietly shaping you for years. You begin to notice 3 quiet patterns. The first is that you return to the rosary again and again, especially when life gets heavy. The second is that something in you is drawn back to the Eucharist, not as a habit, but as hunger. Sometimes it's as simple as walking into a quiet church when you don't even feel strong. You sit down, you exhale, and for the first time all day, your soul stops bracing for impact. Not because life is fixed, because you're back near the center. And the third is a childlike instinct that whispers to Mary in hard moments, not to demand outcomes, but to stay close. These are not guarantees of an easy life. They are signs of a soul that is walking under protection. He lived those signs with extraordinary consistency. The rosary in his hands, the Eucharist at the center of his life, and an immense love for the Virgin Mary. And when people observed his life closely, they realized something. His strength did not come from avoiding suffering. It came from remaining faithful inside suffering. Which leads to a final quiet question. At the end of life, the real question is not only whether Mary protects. The deeper question is whether we learn to walk as trusting children again, because life teaches us to control everything, but suffering teaches us we cannot, and faith gently leads us back to trust. So take one more quiet moment. Think about the road you have already walked, the storms you survived, the nights you endured, the burdens you carried, and yet, somehow, you are still here, still seeking God, still listening, still hoping. Maybe that itself is a sign that you have not walked alone. Now I'm going to give you a quiet moment, not a speech, a moment. If you can, relax your shoulders, let your jaw unclench, and just breathe naturally. Bring to mind one worry you've been carrying too long, not the whole life story, just one weight. Now imagine placing that weight under Mary's care, not because it disappears, but because you don't carry it alone. And now remember the 3 patterns. Returning to the rosary, being drawn to the Eucharist, whispering to Mary with childlike trust. No pressure, no performance, just recognition. If one of those is already in your life, even small, thank God for that small thread, because small threads are how God pulls a soul back, and let that be enough for today. If this spoke to you, write this in the comments: I'm coming back. And if you're still struggling, write, help me return. Because sometimes the strongest faith is not loud. It is simply the quiet decision to keep walking. And Padre Pio would often remind those who came to him of something very simple. And if you only remember one thing from him today, remember this: don't measure God's presence by how you feel. Measure it by whether you still return, because the return is where grace meets you. The return is where Mary mothers you. The return is where Christ steadies you. And if you return again tonight, even once, that is already a victory the enemy hates. Do not search for the spectacular. Hold on to the faithful. Hold on to prayer. Hold on to the rosary. Hold on to Christ, and step by step, the road will lead you home.